All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining our webinar today, Addressing Talent Shortages in an Unpredictable Labor Market. Very excited to speak with you today. I'm your host and moderator, Chris Cooper. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at LiveHire. We have a phenomenal panel of speakers with us today. So let's dive right in with some introductions. Kelly, I'd love to start with you, if that's all right.
Good morning. Thanks, Chris. And I'm saying good morning because I'm dialing in from London. It's actually good evening over there or good afternoon over there. I'm Kelly Van Nelson. I am the Managing Director of Operations for Asia Pacific for Serco. And my normal place of work is based out of Sydney, managing the Asia Pac ops. But right now today I am in London doing quite a specific assignment in our defence business, which is incredible. I have been with Serco for roughly a year and a half, and prior to that I was the MD of Adecco. And if you want to go beyond that, I am about 30 years in the workforce transformation, system integration, and broader outsourcing and professional services industry in the UK, South Africa, and now in Australia. Delighted to be here and have a large, long-standing interest in what is happening in employability and across the broader landscape, and a very deep SME long-standing expertise in talent management more broadly. So very much looking forward to the discussion with some excellent peers today. And with that, I might hand back to you, Chris. I don't want to labour on it too long, but that is my intro. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly. We're very happy to have you today. And Damien, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you, Kelly. Damien, SAP Managing Director for Australia and New Zealand. I'm in my 16th year at SAP, 5 years as the MD. Locally here, I manage a workforce of nearly 1,700 people across our two markets and serve a significant number of customers in industries that are really significant to Australia. And like Kelly, I'm very much sort of fascinated by what has happened in workplaces and workforces in recent periods, and the challenges and the opportunities that we face. And being a budding economist, these things are particularly interesting to me at both a macro and a micro sort of economic level. So I'm really looking forward to today's discussion. So thank you.
Thanks, Damien. And Christy, over to you to finish us off.
Thanks, Chris. Christy Forrest. I'm the CEO of LiveHire. I've been the CEO for about 5 years. Prior to that, worked for a company called CEB Corporate Executive Board. Joined that company when it was still private and quite small out of North America. For 20 years, worked in that business, and half of that time out of North America and the other half launching our APAC operation. That company was bought by Gartner. So you may be familiar perhaps with some of the work in either of those organizations. And the common thread, I think, on this webinar with Kelly and Damien is a deep fascination with the trends in global talent and workforce, and CEB having published best practice research on how companies deal with changing environments and innovate and move forward and stay agile with respect to business outcomes and competitiveness. What I love about the conversation today is that we're all together working toward the practical realities of how to deal with those big economic shifts and the evolution of talent globally. So very excited as well about this conversation. Very grateful to Damien and the partnership we have with SAP, and to Kelly for truly innovating as a client and demonstrating for the world really what's possible.
Thank you, Christy, and thank you everyone for joining. Just to cover off some quick housekeeping before we dive right in, for anyone who would like to ask questions during the session, there's a little Q&A button down there at the bottom of your screen. So if you could submit questions there, what we will do is monitor that throughout the session, and then we've marked off some time at the end to dive into Q&A more deeply. This whole session is being recorded, and we will share the video afterwards. Also, when the webinar comes to a close, there will be a brief survey. We'd love to just get feedback from any attendees on the quality of the webinar or what you'd like to see in the future, that type of thing. So please do take a second to fill that out. And just a little plug for our next event. We have a webinar in 2 weeks' time with our good friend Al Shermer at TQ Solutions to talk about building out your tech stack and how to build out the business case and the ROI for all of that. So stay tuned for more information on that coming up soon. In terms of the agenda, we've covered off the welcome and the housekeeping, the introductions. We're going to spend the bulk of our time digging into addressing talent shortages in an unpredictable labor market. So we'll start talking about talent sourcing challenges in ANZ. We'll look at that real life example of what Kelly and her team have done at Serco. And then we'll introduce the concept of total workforce management. And then after that, we'll dive into some questions. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen. We'll just go into pure conversation mode. And Damien, I'd love to kick off with you. In your view from SAP, what do you think makes it hard for organizations across ANZ to find the skills that they need?
Chris, I think in the times that we currently live, the challenges that exist for us and actually for all organisations, public and private, probably fall into three buckets. One talks also to the cost of the environment in which talent lives and workplaces, and the environment. Certainly, falls the best rates of workforce participation that we've ever had in this country when we've got the historically lowest rates of unemployment. So you then have those two sort of competing forces. And just looking at some economic data, the rate of vacancy or job vacancies heading into the pandemic, with all of that data about participation and unemployment, we have more than double the level of vacancies coming out of the pandemic. So I think that creates a supply and demand challenge that we need to look at. I think also, given more recently, while we had what was rumoured to be the Great Resignation, which I don't think we experienced significantly in this part of the world, we now have a little bit of a shift, and we certainly have inflationary pressures that are driving sort of households to really consider their circumstances. And that is, they need to pay ever increasing mortgages, and they're quite sensitive about the job that they're working in and the fact that they might move. So pulling people out of existing roles into new roles presents a real challenge for prospective employers. And then it's the nature of work and the nature of people's expectation in a workforce that's a lot more agile, in a workforce that's a lot more digital savvy. The traditional ways of approaching people as candidates is very different. The expectations are vastly different. A recruiting and a hiring and an onboarding process that's elegant and delightful and digital is the expectation, I think, of today's worker. And I don't think that that's the experience that the majority of people in the workforce are enjoying. So it's almost a cornucopia of challenges that we're experiencing on both the demand side and also the supply side. And as it relates to availability, given the pandemic, Australia's had a natural advantage to manage its circumstances, and that was an island. As a result of that, we rely on somewhere in the order of 200,000 skilled migrants entering the country during that period. So we're about 500,000 short on skilled migration. So these add to significant challenges. And then we have the workforce shifts where the current government's focused on sort of 1 million people moving into tech roles, sort of moving out of other industries. So I don't think we have seen a time like this, Chris, where the workforce has been so dynamic. The environment in which we're operating has sort of changed so much and is uncertain. And then finally, we have an experience requirement of workforces today and what they expect from an employer, what they would expect from somebody sort of reaching out. And those things weigh heavily and influence significantly people's sort of willingness to take on a new job or stay in their existing. So it's sort of almost one of those wicked problems. And I think the role that we play and that we see ourselves playing with LiveHire is how do we make that problem less challenging? And at a time when productivity in this country is quite low, how do processes like this, onboarding people and recruiting people, how do we take advantage of technology to really streamline and improve that? So I think certainly without jumping into solutions, there's certainly considerations for how we can do a better job at managing what are a set of difficult circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. And Christy, what are your perspectives on that?
So much there, Damien. You covered a lot of ground, and I agree completely. And it's fascinating to look at the numbers. I think you're right. At a macro level, there's a huge supply demand issue that that any company who is seeking to recruit talent right now, which every company is dealing with that. I had seen some statistics similar to what you'd mentioned, particularly with respect to the tech roles. And of course, every company needs, technology leaders, and it is an interesting moment in time for Australia, given the migration issues through the pandemic. The TCA, the Technology Council of Australia, said that we would have a gap of 1 million workers in that area by 2025. So we have a huge pipeline issue, and that gets to your supply demand, and then it gets very specific in certain segments in particular where everyone is competing. And so I like where you're going on the more humanized, different approach to being able to, and I had a CEO who always used to say, fight the unfair fight. So as an organization, when you're out in the world and you're competing with other organizations, their employment brands, maybe it sounds on paper to be better, but it can feel different to have a more humanized experience and to have that advantage. And I think that people expect that now. And I think the difference for all of us that we can all relate to is our own sort of B2C experience. So as consumers, we live on our phones. We expect that, when we book an Uber, it knows where we are. That's very different to how we used to catch taxis. It knows exactly where we are. We can communicate with the driver. We can input all of our details. It's a very different expectation that people have. And so we have to be able to not only keep up with the times, but use that, I think, as an advantage to meet the expectations in the market. And so part of the challenge is our own, to be able to, meet the market in the way that people want to be engaged. And part of it is, I think, this supply demand, and we've all been through very turbulent times, and we understand the dynamics and all the complexities to what matters to us now. So without getting too deep into employment brands and so forth, I really encourage every company to have a look at the trends in brand attributes that matter most. This is work that CEB and Gartner have done over the years, and they publish every year a summary of what matters to employees. So your ability to actually communicate that is always going to be better if you're in a more humanized format. And so take the power of that information, take the power of technology today and the way that people expect to be engaged with. And I think that's the opportunity, but also the challenge.
Yeah, completely. And I think something across what both of you said, there's also this macro environment of uncertainty in the economy. And so you have a lot of great people who might otherwise be willing to take the risk of jumping ship and looking for something new that are kind of hunkered down and going, maybe now's not the right time. So there's this whole employee wellness, fear, uncertainty factor over the top of it. And all the data that you see published out there across Australia is the number of job applications are dramatically down. Now, granted, they were really, really down per job a year ago. They've ticked up a little bit, but compared to pre-pandemic, kind of 2019, application numbers are still way, way down from what they used to be. And it all goes back to this idea of a little bit of fear and uncertainty combined with rising consumer type expectations and the need to really take a different approach to how you position yourself in market to really attract people to your organization. Kelly, I'd love to hear from you. You have a lot of unique experience across all of this stuff we're talking about. What have you seen even pre-Serco, and then since you've joined that organization a year and a half ago?
I mean, pre-Circle, people have always been at the forefront of business, so that hasn't changed. If you look at what hasn't changed, we've got to value employees and we've got to value candidates and do the absolute best by them in terms of the experience they have when they apply for a job and when they actually become employed by an organisation to look after that talent. That's the one thing that's been stable throughout the 30 years across 3 different continents. What I would say, that the landscape now, and we're at the sort of pointy end of things inside of Circle, the complexity is getting greater. And I say that as we're a business to government provider, so we're watching everything government does. We're watching everything that's moving in and around the employment landscape, and it's a complete moving situation. From a Circle perspective, what we experience is, firstly, the complexity in our own workforce is extraordinary. So we support government in providing services to multiple different contracts in multiple different sectors, and that requires very different roles, role types, and skills. And we've got many different awards and many different enterprise awards that we deal with, which means quite complicated employment conditions to deal with. So not only are we trying to recruit, but we're trying to recruit different role types, different states, different territories from a pay perspective, but also inside of those different industries on complicated contracts. So we watch almost everything in terms of skills moving up and down, in terms of skills shortages, and the movement within the market. And yeah, it's definitely greater than what we've ever seen. And what is, I suppose, good is that government has recognised that. If we look at Labour government coming in, we had the Jobs and Skills Summit in September 2022, which tried to address the skills shortages we see from that unemployment rate Damien mentioned at the kick-off, around it being flat. It's at 3.5%. It's the lowest we've seen in 48 years in the region. We've got, on the flip side of that, we've got youth employment rate a bit higher, and we've got female participation lower than the average as well. So you've got these cohorts of females and of youths and other groups as well that are more addressable. And then you've got this flat unemployment rate, which is extraordinarily low, meaning the market is tight and the talent pool is small, and we're all effectively fishing from the same market. So we, Circle, have been trying to work with government, not just support the contracts to government, but work with government around what is coming down the pipeline with regards to change, policy change, you know, and it is around government's focus and strategic agenda is around keeping that unemployment rate low, trying to readdress migration, which Christy mentioned ceased during the pandemic. And that had enormous impact, you know, 2-3 years with nobody crossing borders coming into the country at all types of skills levels, both skilled and unskilled. So government looking to boost productivity, looking to deliver secure, well-paid jobs with fair pay for everyone, and strong sustainable wage growth, and trying to rebalance cost of living increases. And for Circle, ultimately, that's about expanding employment opportunities and having a really great workforce that we value, that are there for long term. We can get the talent in through the front door, but we treat everybody well, and we give them a career path moving forward, and make sure that the recruitment process doesn't stop there, continues throughout their tenure with Circle. But yeah, lots to do with regards to addressing the skills shortages, getting the skills mix right, upskilling, reskilling, and it continues to be a challenge.
Absolutely. And I mean, given the nature of your business, I mean, Circle employs people in over 20 countries. You have over 50,000 people. It's a big, complex business. And the type of work you do, kind of, your people are everything. That is your business. But I'd love to almost back up a year and a half to, you know, January 2022. You joined the organization. Kind of, what's your initial assessment? What are the challenges that kind of get laid at your feet at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I joined the organisation in the role I'm in, and part of that role is managing talent attraction and talent management, all of the workforce management of you know, thousands of workers. and that's a 24/7 operation. So coming in, really, I was looking at what we needed to evolve, what worked, which is always the best thing to look at first, what is working, and then what needs to evolve to create a sustainable approach to attracting that talent, engagement, and rapid deployment to enable the organisation to respond to really high volume surge, which we have very frequently in Serco to support government in complex needs. And also specialist hiring. So it's not one work type or another, or one job type or another. When I say volume, sometimes we have thousands of hires on any given day to actually bring into the business to meet a unique surge in government or something similar to that. And at the same time, we may be looking for a very niche role, of which there may be one or two people in the entire country has that skill set.
Wow.
What I saw coming in, basically the previous approach to recruitment was probably quite reactive. It was certainly costly, and it was process intense, and that spanned all of our business across multiple industries, which are defence, healthcare, FM, justice, immigration, and other areas. And that process had morphed over time to be dominated by a lot of manual steps, quite an overly complex technical stack in terms of systems, or agency fees, and advertising, marketing spend, and also reliance on third-party agencies were high. And internal processes certainly relied heavily on human effort, as opposed to a better reliance and a better rebalance of technical reliance versus people, which ultimately leads to increased errors and at times a poor candidate experience, or a substandard one where we recognise we could do better. So transforming that function, that broader talent management function, end to end, from somebody coming in to paying them the right wage at the right time on the right hours in a very complicated business. That has been a focus of the agenda for the board since the day I joined, and continues to be so. And I suspect it will not cease anytime soon.
Got it. So it's a board level priority to go, right, this is basically the supply chain of our business is people. So let's make it better and more efficient. No small challenge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No small challenge. Yeah. I mean, people are only, ultimately, the biggest asset that we have, and we absolutely in Serco have recognised the transformation project has to start at the top of the recruitment cycle, right upstream. We recognise the need to attract and hire people quickly, and enable people to move through the process as seamlessly as possible. And we kicked that off back to basics, just mapping out the end-to-end process, what it needed to look like, future state, right the way through to onboarding, and right the way through to payroll, to mitigate risks, reduce costs, to really make sure business is sustainable in the long term during surges, ups and downs, and during market volatility, and to improve productivity as a very large and complicated workforce delivering value-add services to government, and making sure we're giving taxpayers return on their on the projects that we run on behalf of government and work in collaboration with on government. So we had to achieve a very sustainable and proactive solution. And at the heart of that, we, as a board and a broader organisation, we realised that we needed a talent acquisition platform that worked. It was robust, and it was agile enough to underpin quite a major transformation that was required of us. And hence getting involved with LiveHire, we went through a very rigorous RFP and selection process, and we selected LiveHire to be part of our technology architecture based on its ability to automate some of those processes, build talent pools of hire ready candidates, and just get the right balance right on the reliance of people and technology moving forward.
No, that's great. And so you kind of
Yeah.
you set up the LiveHire plus SAP tech stack with other point technologies mixed in as well. So you kind of had a coherent, efficient tech stack pulled together. What ultimately was the project like, and then kind of the results you were able to achieve?
I mean, the project, when you're implementing any major technology and you're on live delivery 24/7 for government, it's no easy job, and it's not for the faint-hearted.
Yeah.
But the project was actually excellent. We knuckled down early as a team to do the planning up front and do it right, make sure our business case was solid and it was signed off and endorsed at top down level, and was needed bottom up as well. That was well socialized. So we did an extraordinary amount of pre-work, which paid off in the long term. And we engaged LiveHire and got a lot of help and support from LiveHire on prior learnings from other customers that LiveHire work with, and leveraged those. So not just looking internally, but looking outwards as well. And sat with the wider customer base of LiveHire as well, just to learn, what works, what doesn't, how to use the platform effectively, and how to use it in our type of business, which is quite unique in its range. And yeah, so the project was good. We kicked it off well, did the right planning up front, had the right team and the right budget against that business case, and we led it with all of the right governance and controls around it, without clipping the wings of the project, and with agility needed within the project. That was important. And got stuck in, and we did a really great implementation of LiveHire, and a very sensitive integration into our backbone platform in Asia Pacific, which is SuccessFactors and SAP, which we use for all manner of managing talent once they're in the workforce, and bringing them in terms of right through to our back office pay. And that worked very well as well. But any system integration of that size and nature, when you've got thousands of workers on your employment books, it needs incredible care. We've roughly 15,000 that we were dealing with on this project, and you don't want to make a mistake for one individual, or drop the ball in delivery or in managing your workforce during an implementation like that.
Yeah,
so it was good. Yeah, it was good upfront from day one. We put the work in.
Oh, that's awesome. And I mean, just incredible, some of the stuff you guys achieved. I mean, millions in savings. Your candidates respond generally in less than 20 minutes to outreach, and over 70,000 candidates in your talent community in less than 9 months, which is just, these are ridiculous numbers that you guys have achieved. So it's amazing. And it's a real testament to the team at Serco doing any kind of adoption of technology, pulling everything together. The transformation that you guys went through as rapidly as you did for as big a company as you are is truly incredible. So real hats off to you and the team.
Yeah, thanks. The Rapids project is definitely an interesting one. We did go fast. We didn't want to wait, not least because of all of the pressures Christian and Damien mentioned there. We were facing into that, and you couldn't look away, you couldn't hide from that. There was nowhere to go, so we had to roll up the sleeves and get on with a rapid implementation. So we had quite an aggressive timeline. And we went, pretty much from kicking off the business case at the start of the year to getting into deep project mode mid-year. And 9 months later, we've got, very new technology implemented successfully in operations across, 15,000 people. 70,000 upwards candidates in our talent pools now from, that 9-month window. So the team have embraced the platform, and we did a lot of change work and a lot of training and a lot of engagement of champions and all the things you do in projects like this. But now and post implementation of LiveHire, the team are much more able to forward think, and not think as in vision, but actually practically look ahead and build talent pipelines for key roles that are for the future, and we know are coming into our demand pipeline, linked into workforce planning. So creating talent pools of aligned skills and capability that we can then rapidly deploy virtually overnight, turnkey, for those surge hiring needs to meet government demand of that nature. And we've achieved that through implementing different omni-channel sourcing and engagement through into LiveHire, using all of the AI functionality, and absolutely arms wide open, embracing smart tech that can supplement smart people, and just again getting the productivity right and the balance there between the two to reduce the reliance on those agencies and labor firms. I would say we now have got a best-in-class talent acquisition system in its entirety, top to bottom, from upstream through to the back office. In that blend, we've of CRM and ATS and SAP. We've got some point systems with regards to rostering and some of the complexities that we have to deal with and that's important. So making sure you've mapped all of that out end to end, and making sure that the user experience and the lens of the candidate is first and foremost. It had to be an easy application process for them. One touch actually was what we were aiming for. If I look back to before LiveHire, we were 30 to 70 steps to apply for a job, and now we are one click, pull through your details from whatever platform your CV is sitting on, and pulling that through into the database, into the platform, and then being able to correctly match or talent pool and leverage every single application to the value that it should be utilized. Lots that we did there with the team, and but yeah, the rapid piece, 9 months, it was definitely intense.
Yeah, no small feat. And you're even using it a bit for internal mobility now as well, right?
Yeah, we are. Intent initially was to address the shortages in the market, the skills shortages, to make sure applicants were king and we could understand every single applicant's unique skills and find them a role within Circle, and reverse engineer the thought of a candidate applies for a job and they will be assessed against that job, and more have a candidate apply, better understand their strengths from the application using smart tech to then find the right role for them that best suited their capability inside of Circle. And then as we were really building out that business case, we recognized the need to continue to do that inside the organization as well, making sure we were offering good opportunities for everyone inside Circle. They could see internal job openings. We could leverage their skills, and we could have conversations with the right people to try and align people and succession plan and so on and so forth. So we did. We now manage all of our internal job applicants, if you like, applying for either a lateral move elsewhere in the business or a promotional move or similar to that. We do use it for that purpose, and we do use it for external hires as well. We can see the difference between the two. We can prioritize across both pools, and ultimately that does give us enormous reach into the workforce and into attracting in the right workforce. So yeah, we did. We went both internal and external with the platform use.
Oh, that's awesome. And it's just so impressive to see how you guys have done it. And I think kind of any conversation broadly about sourcing in a really tight and tough market, you've got the external side that you've done, you've got the internal, and then there's also the whole contingent side of it, which Circle doesn't use it a ton for that space. I know that's not really a big thing in this part of the world for you per se. But I know, Damien, you mentioned much earlier in the conversation that kind of over 20% of the Australian workforce is kind of contingent in one form or another. I'd love to get your thoughts on that whole part of the equation in the workforce, and kind of what's the potential for something like an SAP Fieldglass or any kind of vendor management system to help manage that, help companies kind of get their arms around it? And is there something that you see organizations needing to do to kind of fill in that part of the equation as well?
Yeah, Chris, there is the 23% of the workforce that's casual. There's about 7% that hold temporary visas. There's a large subcontracting community. And in order to manage this part of the workforce like it were your workforce, let's say that in the concept of a total workforce management, is really important. And listening to Kelly reference a system that was costly, process intensive and reactive, these are not the sorts of words or capabilities that really engender a workforce to come and work for you. And the fact that in such a short period of time, that a digital, a delightful, a responsive and proactive service and a differentiating service is really the opportunity in these tight labour markets. So we see solutions that look and after and manage and care for that workforce in the same way that the internal systems would do. That is a differentiating aspect. It's also a way forward if we think about industries like mining, We think about industries that are in agriculture, things that have some seasonality, things that are influenced by the nature of commodity markets. Having the right skills are really important in the same way that they are in a full-time workforce. So sort of contingent labour platforms allow you to do those things. They even allow for companies who set up business models around this, be it in mining services, to be able to manage the workforce that would come onto a mine site at Rio Tinto one day, 2 weeks later at BHP, another time at Newcrest. So this all talks to mobility, but also a level of efficiency inside of the domestic workforce at a challenge. But I was really, I mean, Kelly's point about going from 30 clicks to 1 click, the focus on measurable business outcomes in this project, I think were really sort of exciting. And I think the more and more that people think about their business challenges in business terms, with the technology and the partnership that we have, Chris, I think the solutions are just quite outstanding. So I think many of the challenges we face, I think, are addressable with the right mindset to the problem. I think we have the opportunity to do amazing things.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, regardless of whether you're looking at perm or internal or contingent or whatever it might be, creating that user experience, creating that ability for efficiency, not only for the candidate, but internally for your team as well, goes a very, very long way to be able to have that kind of talent supply chain humming for you. And
Chris, I would just say, in the day of on-premise software where people felt they needed to own infrastructure, they needed to do these, I don't think these scenarios were possible of playing out. But in the world of SaaS software and digitisation and the ability to be really responsive, as an employer, the cloud and software as a service provides considerable opportunity. And I think that's what we're all excited about.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It's completely game changing in terms of how companies can approach it to be a bit more agile. And, you know, Kelly, obviously you're in the UK at the moment. Christy's spent a whole lot of time in the US over the last couple of years, kind of exploring that market and seeing how they're tackling things over there. Christy, I'd love to get your perspectives on things like the rise of contingent labor in the US. Damien, to your point, if it's 23% here, what does it look like over in the US, and how are some of the smartest companies, the Fortune 1000 over there, how are they kind of tackling it?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see the innovation happening there, and from a different starting point. And so different starting point in the percent of the workforce that is already contingent. And depending on which reports you look at, it's something on the order of 40 to 45% or more in North America, which is a huge contrast, but it probably conveys the opportunity. You know, I think that we've been talking in terms of supply and demand. And when you think about supply of candidates and their openness, not only to working remotely or working in different ways, but also to being employed in different ways. It is, you know, if we've said part of the way to solve the problem that we all face in the supply of talent and how we compete is the way we compete, there's also an expansion of supply, perhaps, in thinking about that incremental extended workforce is often the reference. And so 40 to 45% in North America just presents the same kind of opportunity, I think, in other parts of the world as something that may be untapped and a creative solution. The interesting way that that 40 to 45% today is being hired for these large Fortune 1000 companies is, and most companies, is using a panel of staffing suppliers, and they are all competing to try to place their candidate. The candidate's probably not having a great experience at that point, but is ultimately doing work on behalf of the Fortune 1000 company and would be interested to have more of a relationship with that company ahead of the employment, which they can't be employed by that company because then they're not contingent anymore. But they know exactly who they are interested to go work for. And the employment brand that has been developed so strongly on the talent acquisition side of the business is an asset. So in thinking about the creativity that companies there are employing, what if they created a talent pool of those individuals, and that was the first place that a Fortune 1000 company goes to be able to look for the talent and save themselves, in some cases, 10 points of markup, which for these large spend accounts could be tens of millions of dollars. So you have this convergence of this level of receptivity in the labor market to being employed in that way. You have compression in the market around cost savings and a better way of doing things. You have an understanding that the employment brand is an asset. Is it being leveraged? And you also have technology that allows you to do that in a way that that doesn't represent co-employment risk. It actually is, again, ahead of employment and a different, better mousetrap. So that is a trend in America called direct sourcing. There's lots of different definitions, but using your employment brand to build a talent community, talent pools, this is the work that we're doing. And because, and Damien and Kelly, I love the reference to the outcomes, because LiveHire has been obsessed for so long with measuring everything we do and ensuring that it actually has an impact. It's completely on display. It's survival of the fittest in that kind of environment in terms of delivering speed, quality, how you compete for the placement of that individual relative to others. The last thing I will say is, not only is the current economic environment leading companies to think about the cost savings and being able to tap that segment of the workforce, but there is this element of agility that we all understand, having been through in our own organizations, these up and down elements of business expansion, the pandemic, what happened for certain industries there. It was literally a tale of two cities for some companies, right? Where they were bricks and mortar and they had to shut their doors or really downsize. Or if you were Zoom and we're using it right now, that was a heyday. That was that was the boom in your business. And so that, I think, probably is the order of the day for our future in the world, and being able to be agile. And a lot of companies talk about it. Boy, Kelly, your ability to be agile on a project of this size is the pinnacle of what companies would love to achieve, but also the model, I think, for everyone. But it just does speak to how much we have to be able to flex and be nimble and be responsive. And I think there are some questions in the Q&A chat for you, Kelly, on how you even read the challenges in the market around the talent and the ups and downs that you see even in the skill sets. But we have to build something that is responsive. And so I think that we're seeing these big organizations who really struggle to move quickly, see the opportunity, and they're taking a little bit of time to get there, but it is the wave and it is the point of differentiation, to your point, Damien, and they're feeling the need to do that in a way that is different in kind.
Yeah, and I think that flexibility, that agility, it kind of brings back, Damien, you mentioned earlier the concept of total workforce management. That just idea of, okay, well, if I'm truly going to flex up and down with the market, I need to be able to get my arms around every type of talent there is in my organization, whether it's external candidates, it's internal employees, it's the contingent workforce. If they're working for my company, I need to be able to see them, know who they are, and flex all over the place. And it's interesting in our own data, but also in data that I've seen published elsewhere, something like 40–45% of people who apply for a job now are saying, I'm open to whatever you've got. I'll take a contract role. I'll go full time with you guys, permanent, whatever you got, throw it my way, I'd consider it. So I think it all ties back to that concept of, employees want more flexibility in their roles. That's what they're looking for. And they're open to working in whatever arrangement you might have for them. But the thing that they come back to at the end of the day is the employer brand and their interest in working for your company. And I think that ability to draw them into a single place where you can kind of see all of that, that is the key that gives you the flexibility. I'd love to get everyone's just view on this, utopia of total workforce management for a moment, what that might give you, and then let's dive straight into some questions.
I can have a go if you like, just to extend on total workforce utopia, which one day we will all get there, but it might not be in our lifetime. I think it goes deeper than even permanent workforce and contingent workers, and it goes to all of the nuances of every single worker. And again, I'm thinking inside of Circle, we've got a very high number of veterans in our business. We've got a very high number of reservists who are still deployed into defence and have commitments there that we need to honour and support and release people for to commit. And you need to see that inside of your platforms and where people are and when they're working and when they're elsewhere doing performing other services. We've got increased numbers of apprenticeships and cadets and traineeships joining, and then they've potentially got educational commitments or other training requirements that they have to commit to for their 4 years or however long. And again, same thing, you need to see in the system what you're doing there. You've got increasing D&I needs, and quite rightly so. So you want the right blend in your workforce, you want the right workforce mix. And you do need to have that flex when you need to scale up and down, virtually overnight. Utopia is what you don't want to do is have to go out, knock on an agency door and spend huge amounts of money to address what is actually a daily scenario now. That's not a unique situation, it's not a COVID situation. The blend of workforce is changing, and it will continue to be that type of complex mix. So for Circle, we were looking at the time of just completely transforming our platforms and technology approach. We were looking for the speed Christy mentioned. We were looking for nimble agility. We were looking to be able to respond to a government. It could be an emergency circumstance. It could be a contract that we can see coming down the pipe. Short term with surge, it could be a 20-year build of an asset, and then maintain and operate and staff that for 2 decades, and know what that looks like when you're planning the future workforce. But what we didn't want to do is continue to spend. I think Christy mentioned tens of thousands, and I was cringing in my seat. We are not now spending tens of millions of dollars on our advertising and agency spend. We're actually utilizing without any wastage every candidate that comes through before we would need to broaden the horizons through using tech. We saved about 4 million in the 9 months actually, and still going. And that wasn't through cost cutting of heads. It wasn't through anything like that. That was through purely getting better return out of our talent community, building it ahead of the curve, having people work ready to switch on in those circumstances. And we've had extraordinary return. We do measure everything. We do have a giant tape measure. Return is, there are dollar values and things like that you're measuring, but also there are things like better candidate experience, your stickiness as an employer and your value proposition that you're giving, and how the tenure that people stay in the organization because they're getting career opportunities that they may not have had before. So and we have seen some great returns on there, where the savings there in the 18-minute average on a candidate, getting a response time turnaround on an application, and many other things that are linked to better conversion. But yeah, utopia, not having to rely on just spending additional dollars whenever you have a changing business requirement and need, and being more proactive than that.
Yeah. Damien, Christy, anything you guys want to add? Thank you, Kelly. That was great.
Yeah, look, Chris, I think in context of total workforce management, in an environment where the workforce is more agile, more prone to working the way that they would want to work, casual, part-time, more flexible working arrangements, doesn't mean that those people are any less valuable to an organisation. To both, Kelly and Chrissy's point, that they are inherently assets and valuable assets. And if they are valuable assets and important, then they need to be managed and treated in a particular way. And the idea that we would invest in platforms that manage, care and govern the work that people who are full-time employees or employees of the company versus those that are contingent or indirect, I think those days have passed, because it's the ability for companies to scale up and to take advantage of opportunities is really reflective of their ability to bring people with these type of work patterns on board. So I think we're starting to see a change where it's actually, to your point and the research you observed, people are very comfortable working that way if that's their choice. So we have to be comfortable in providing them with solutions that make them feel comfortable about that choice. Otherwise, they'll go somewhere else. And I think platforms that better suited to this reflect companies that care more about it. And the companies that care more about it, I think, will ultimately be successful in the war on talent, especially for the workforce that's quite comfortable looking for the flexibility, maybe not the permanency, but still the connection.
Absolutely. That's always a tricky balance to strike, right? You want the connection, even if you don't want the permanency.
Yes.
The point I'd love to make, and it's very, because there's just so much that's been beautifully, perfectly said, is that I think that this concept of total workforce, you know, because it's been talked about for a long time, and it hasn't been fully embraced. I think that the candidates are ready, to your point, Damien. I think that the urgency for corporates in their ability to differentiate is upon us. And I think that what Kelly demonstrates is that the change isn't as hard as you think if you plan. You know, it has been done, and it is possible. And so what a beautiful opportunity for talent leaders around the world to lead this for their organization, to bring something that really answers the most fundamental and important questions for companies around the world. And you've got everything you need. You can absolutely pull it off. And you'd need to have a bat phone to Kelly to make sure you know how it's been done well. But it just proves it's more than possible.
Yeah, and well said. And thank you all so much. I'm going to jump into a quick question. But before I do, I just want to thank all of you for taking the time to be on the panel today. You've been absolutely excellent. Thank you. Got a question for Kelly from Simone. Interested to know what sources you use to stay abreast of skills shortages going up and down, aside from, of course, anecdotal evidence experienced by your recruitment team directly.
I mean, we haven't really touched hugely on intelligence and sources of information, and also data, and the importance of having good quality data, not just from your internal organization, but external data. I love this space and read every single report and everything coming out of government and what's coming in policy making and all those things. But we do leverage industry as a whole, and that's important. So what is happening across broader organizations and credible companies that are releasing detailed data that they've done their research on and surveyed on. We partner with a number of those organizations, for example, Student Edge on youth data, what that demographic is doing and their trends and their work behaviors, what they're looking for, what support they need, many others. So we pull in external sources. We leverage academia, so we engage with universities. We roll up our sleeves and actually help at grassroots level in schools to see what can we do to get youths work ready and entering the workforce with skills that employers are actually looking for, soft as well as hard. So an external lens, I would say, and then internally, the reliance on data is just huge, and making sure that your data has integrity and as best as possible, it's real time. And whether you're gathering data from a LiveHire platform or from SAP as your core, it doesn't matter. It's the data is correct and accurate and can be relied upon to inform your decision making. And we do invest there. We do invest not just in analytics and in reporting and in data, but in predictive analytics using the trends we now see and can pattern within our systems about our workforce. So people data and analytics and rich MI and building that. And you do need the right platforms to do that. Otherwise, everyone's been there manually running 1,000 spreadsheets and trying to pivot. It's that overlay of government landscape, employment landscape, industry as a whole, academia, and then your own internal data being good and solid, and then taking the step back and taking a good look at the big picture and what it's actually telling you, and having the right smart talent in your organization that can help with you, can help with that, and using it to make informed decisions from an evidence base, really. But lots of different sources. We don't use one, and nor should we. And yeah, I'm a big believer of knowing what's going on in and around the region.
Awesome, thank you. And I think we've got time for one more. What was your approach to the technology change management for this project and communication internally?
This was a big one, I would say, on any 9-month major system implementation, and you're very smoothly and neatly integrating with SAP, which is running our entire region workforce. It requires very careful planning around change management, and it shouldn't be underestimated. So we definitely made sure we had a well-oiled business case. It was socialized, it was supported and endorsed. I led that from an exec sponsorship perspective, on the forefront of that, vocal about it, making sure it was on the table and in every board meeting, and we understood what we were taking on, and we were all behind it. So got the wider board support. At a company level, we did early communication, so we shared our business problem and the problem statement, and what we were doing to address that, and what outcomes we were looking for, and again, what support we needed from the business. So we did a lot of written comms, multi-channel comms, actually, much like omni-channel recruitment. Used lots of different channels on our various internal platforms and in our forums. We did identify some change champions, both technology change, people change, and training, and identified them early. We had a small team. And we actually work with LiveHire, to understand what's gone before us, and what didn't work, and what should we, face into and plan around, and actually leveraged vendor capabilities actually, and got LiveHire to come in and advise our business and handhold us a little bit and make sure we were on the right path. And if we were straying, we were pulled back in, and asking we had a number of meetings with the CEO there and so on, where pointedly asked, what are we doing wrong here, and how do we quickly turn that around overnight and get back on track? And we did that very successfully, and in fact did hit our deadline, did hit our budget, and turned the lights on a new platform as we expected to. So yeah, don't cut corners is what I would say, and don't think you can do it all yourself, and you've got all the skills that you need in your own business. Yeah, working together with in a partnership with a vendor was really key for us. We had a really good outcome.
Thank you, Kelly. That's awesome. And Damien and Christy, thank you as well. I really appreciate, again, you all taking the time to do this today. I hope the audience got a lot of value from it. And of course, we'll share this around afterwards as well. But with that, we'll bring the webinar to a close. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.